guess let's just begin with where we are and, what the LTB showrooms are and how you got your hands on them.
Okay. Well, this is a story going back to before the City of Culture. In fact, it goes back about 5 years before that as well. I don't know. I'm not a creative or I'm not an artist or a musician, but I love the energy that creative people bring into a space, particularly a physical space. And I used to go and see small bands and things in other towns and cities, and I can remember saying to myself, in some place in Leicester, why doesn't Coventry have cool things like this going on? What can I wonder if there's anything I can do to make that happen? And I didn't have the slightest notion at the time that there was actually something that I could do, because I'm ex-telecoms and I'd been doing a little bit of sort of property development, doing up fixer-upper kind of things, but I didn't have a clue about running a venue or networking with artists. I didn't really know very many people in Coventry that were doing anything like that. I just had this vague notion that it needed to be more interesting. And about a week later, I just happened to get an invitation to what's now the Telegraph Hotel, which is a boutique hotel on the other side of Coventry, from a developer guy that I know, who said, "Hey, look, we've just bought this for £2.5 million from the Coventry Evening Telegraph newspaper group. We're going to turn it into a hotel, but we don't have the time or the money to do that for at least a year, and I hate the idea of it sitting here doing nothing. What do you reckon?" So he invited me to have a look round, and just said, "Look, it's yours if you want it. You must know people, interesting people in Coventry, just, I don't know, do something with it." So I kind of parked my day job, which is sort of like a part-time restoration thing, and me and a mate just decided we would open it, do the front of house, because the developer guy was originally going to do the volunteer staffing side of things, but of course that was too difficult in the end, so it just ended up being me and a few mates who had to organise that. But I just set it up and reached out to a few people and said, "Look, we've got an opportunity here to do something interesting. Put some art on the wall, throw projections up on the wall, do some little impromptu DJ sets, anything really." And I was just astonished by the number of people who were coming through the door on, like the first weekend we must have had like 300 people just walk through,
wow,
who wanted to have a look round this unusual space, because it was, the building was the star. It wasn't what I was trying to do with it particularly. It was people who just were really inquisitive, because it's not every day you get an opportunity to walk into a space that really the public's never been invited into, because it wasn't just the front of house, like the shop element, the offices. It was the print facility that sat behind that in a huge big basement. In fact, there were two huge big stores. Even had the original, the huge big print machines were still in there. All the kit was still in there. It was like the Marie Celeste of the printing newspaper era. And there was water in the basement. It's like this deep that we had to squeegee out every morning just to get the place,
But every morning?
Pretty much. Like it was below the water table down there, and like the River Sherborne was happily making its way into the premises. But that was my first introduction to the kind of interesting things you can do with interesting spaces. And I suppose my skill set is, I can fix problems that buildings have pretty cheaply but effectively. I'm just one of these people that can do a bit of everything, whether it's electrics, plumbing, carpentry, bricklaying, all sorts of everything. Just various skills that I picked up. And I know if I can't do something, I can bring people in who do it as a favour for me. So that was quite an eye-opening experience. We only had it for 1 year, but I genuinely think it's one of the reasons that Coventry got awarded the City of Culture, because City of Culture judges came in as part of their walking tour of the city and went, "Whoa, this is cool," because we had like artists just setting up in different corners doing things. It wasn't anything that I staged particularly for their visit. It was just naturally. It's a bit like LTB. It is just a a community of interesting people doing interesting things. And they were walking around going, wow, this is just the kind of grassroots initiative that we want to see, that our expertise and cash can help kind of create some legacy with. And I thought, yeah, fantastic, that's going to be great. But our window of opportunity closed before the City of Culture rolled in. But I was always looking for another premises to do a similar thing for. Mm. And we had a couple of short-term opportunities that didn't really happen particularly. And then I came across this because basically, with City of Culture on the near horizon, I was sort of saying to the team, hey, look, there's lots of stuff that you're going to be funding, mainstream artists and programming. There's loads more that's under your radar. The fringe stuff, I don't like that phrase, but the fringe grassroots stuff that I know loads of people who just won't be getting funding. They can't write funding applications. They're not established artists or anything, but I just know that if I can find a space, I can do some really interesting stuff. And we looked, I say we, because I was on a working team that City of Culture put together at my behest just to try and find some spaces for this kind of thing to happen. Eventually this came on my radar, but because it wasn't accessible, because it's just an upstairs space that we originally had here, they weren't interested in getting involved, and I kind of understood that. I did try and get 1,500 quid out of them to fund a wheelchair lift, but by then they were just, their heads were elsewhere.
They're gone. Right.
So that's how come I got my hands on this space. Basically, somebody introduced me to the pub, because originally there was a pub downstairs, who had derelict spaces above the pub that I basically said, look, if I fix all the problems that you've got with this, can I have it as a freebie? And there were pigeons flying around, there were broken windows, there were holes in the roof, there was no electric, so there was quite a lot of stuff that needed doing. It was about 10 grand worth of materials spent that I had to do, but I took my time in. And as luck would have it, COVID happened about that same time. So along with a lot of other people, I suddenly had a load of spare time on my hands. I could come down here on my own and just sort of crack on with getting the long list of stuff done. And really the glittering prize for me and the other folks that were involved in that was just this, well, if we could have our own space to do our own thing, it's a kind of build it and they will come philosophy, really, because I kind of knew that if we had a cool space, and that's sort of it's what I do well, creating an interesting space, that people would be drawn to it and will walk in and go, whoa, I could do this, or this thing that I've always had in mind to collaborate with X, Y, Z on. This is the place for that, and interesting things would start happening. And we kind of grew the idea from that, and probably in the first year had 15,000 people through the door. So that was a mixture of artists, musicians, creatives, but mainly the visiting public, because I'm not interested in what we call artist allotments. I don't like gifting studio space to people to just sort of do things. I like everything that happens here, I want to be public facing. Mm-hmm. For me, the big crusade is not just to give grassroots arts and culture a showcase, but it's to try and develop an audience and an appetite and a curiosity for exploring those kind of cultural offerings that for me are, I don't know, it should really be part of the DNA of any town and city, to have those things visible and binding communities together. And I try and set up this space to have something for everyone. So I'm not interested in only creating some kind of nice gallery for white middle class arts types. This is for everyone. We kind of call those people because there's loads of people that think that arts and culture isn't for them. It doesn't matter it's Coventry or Leamington or wherever. There's always a chunk of people who just don't think that this kind of thing is for them. Mm-hmm. So I try my best to lay out strands so that people. Let's just kill that. so that people have more reasons to visit, if you like. So we put Coventry history stuff on here. I'm interested in Coventry history, so it's something I enjoy doing. But it kind of brings a non-arts audience into the building. But really, it's the building that's the start. I'm always trying to. I kind of think it's the property developer perspective. Every time you turn a corner, there's got to be something interesting to look at. So I'm creating a series of vistas that are visually interesting. So that's whether that's using the building's architecture or how we decorate things, or the lighting, or the art, or the projections, or the music that we've got in there. That it's just something that kind of creates a series of wow moments. And the informality of the space, and the fact it's a bit kind of rough and ready, but it's curated. So you kind of, there's always a tipping point with these facilities. I'm forever rushing around just sort of placing things, to stop it looking too messy, because if you're the wrong side of the tipping point, it goes from being a cool artsy thing to just looking like a crap village hall. And it's a very fine line that a space like this kind of inhabits. There's like a sweet spot where it doesn't look too good, because if it looked too good, people would be thinking, what is this trying to be, the Herbert or something? Yeah. It's crap because you haven't painted that, But but if it's too rubbish, people just walk in and go, what the fuck's this? It's like...
Do you have like markers of what tells you where that tipping point is? Or is it just sort of intuitive in you?
It is kind of intuitive. It's for me, the key metric is whether it takes a good photograph. And I know that's just visual only, but it tends to be, if there's something that's stopping any view of any of the spaces taking a good photo, then I kind of think, okay, what is it in this space that's not quite working? And I always start with the worst thing. What's the worst thing that's letting this down? Is it, just things that are piled up in one corner that are just, is there too much in here? Is there not enough in here? Is the lighting wrong? Is just, it can be one of a number of things. But it's a curational challenge. That's the discipline that you just think, okay. But I always start with, there was loads of work that had to go into just getting it to this point. Just stripping out the things that don't work and going back to the basics and just trying to get as many of the fundamentals right as possible before we start to reintroduce new stuff into it. So that's the discipline that we apply. But it always surprises me how little you really need to do to spaces to get to that tipping point. But it always surprises me where that tipping point is. Because you kind of be doing stuff, and then you'll turn around and look at the space and you think, fuck, I've got there, because suddenly it's gone from looking crap to looking like something that, you could hang a piece of art on the wall, and suddenly it would be something that would create a dinner table conversation. I use this phrase a lot. It's something that elevates it beyond the normal to something that when you sit down at the end of the day with your friends and family, it'd be something you have to tell someone about. Hey, I did loads of things during the day, but this one thing, I went to LTB. There was this mad room that had this blah blah blah. It's a dinner table conversation. So it's just something that's
gauge.
You know what I mean? It's a bit. It's extraordinary, if you like. The reason I'm trying to give opportunity to people that either don't have a lot, that they, I love giving first display opportunities to people who haven't had the chance to get their art on display, but I like to mix it up with people who have lots of experience. So we've got high-end art here, we've got low-end art here, we've got everything in between. I don't like to have too many of the same kind of things, so and I also get bored really easily, seeing the same things in the same places, but I'm like the visiting public. They are the same.
It's a reflection.
So I think you have to be able to look at the space with those fresh eyes that a new visitor would have. So I really kind of try and keep that professional detachment, if you like, from it, and not get too close to things. But I'm always itching to to put new stuff in. And then the content, a lot of people ask me, but what are you going to do with all this when you're finished? Well, okay, the content isn't the difficult bit. That's actually the easy bit, because we're always getting interesting things coming to us, or doing a call out, and then we'll get interesting things come in. It's the building, finding spaces like this in the right kind of space in the right place is the precious thing. And for me, it's, I don't know, it kind of goes back to caveman, cavewomen times when, or Anglo-Saxon times when everybody would come together in a great hall and they would be sharing stories. So the wisdom of the old would be shared with the youth. People would be sharing their experiences of what they've seen and done during the day. And I think increasingly in the modern age with our phones, we get our culture fix from, if you get some little idea and you want to investigate it, you type it in and you get your culture fix from the phone. You don't get it from collaborating with people or meeting people and sharing ideas or asking questions or expressing curiosity in a physical space with other people. You don't get that anymore. So I'm quite, part of the passion with this is to create those physical spaces that people can come together and do that. And it gives people a kind of a mandate, an excuse, because it's so odd and unexpected that you can walk into a room with people that you don't know and say something like, whoa, this is a bit bonkers, isn't it? And it kind of gives you an excuse to have a conversation with people that you do not know. Yeah. And that wouldn't happen or so much in a place like the Herbert, for example. I'd feel awkward striking up a conversation with someone I don't know in that kind of environment because, I don't know, it's just something almost too formal about it that doesn't...
The environment, I guess the way the art sits around this environment is very accessible in terms of you can just engage with it in an authentic way, like, this is bonkers.
Yes, and if you don't like it, it's fine to say, yeah, this is crap. But I don't know, I've got quite a throwaway way of talking about stuff that, I don't know. There's stuff that I don't like, or I'm not passionate about in here, but there's stuff that I like. But the fact that it's here at all is interesting for me because I'm getting to see lots of things. And even if the visual art doesn't grab me, there's normally a story associated with that is interesting. Or just the fact that it's in an interesting building is enough. That's, I don't know, it's a bit hard to describe, but for me, that's why it works in here.
I really like that whole philosophy and that vision behind it. Like when you're talking about the city culture stuff, actually this being a reflection of the city's culture beneath the facade, the surface level of what those kinds of initiatives bring, which is kind of very performance-based, like that show the best and the shiniest stuff. That really speaks to me in terms of being such an important part and something that's missing, as you say, in a lot of...
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's a much used phrase, but I like things that have lots of authenticity and feel real and have soul, I suppose. It's kind of what I mean. And this, even though it's rough and ready, it's kind of up by the people. It's of the people, by the people, for the people.
That's it.
That's what this is. And it can be. It takes all sorts of shapes and forms. It's and you don't have to fill in any forms to get your art displayed or to do your event, because it's not just about art on the walls. I try and encourage people to use the spaces to put on their own show, put on their own event, and that can take any form. So it's. But we try and make it as easy as possible for people to do that. So, because I know a lot of things, if there's a cost involved, whether that's financial or whether that's a time cost, it's an obstacle that stops things happening. And it really is, it's a great opportunity having a building which is pretty much a freebie. Okay, I have to pay about £500 a month to pay for the electricity, but Cov City Council. It took a lot of arm twisting, but I've got to say, they delivered it in the end. We got a freebie lease. We also got 100% business rates exemption. And that suddenly means that I can say yes to loads of things that in any other situation you'd have to be asking some kind of higher fee for. We don't have a higher rate here. That's not to say that I don't look for donations if I think that it's sort of like a pay what you feel, pay what you can approach. And if I think that if there's some money being made, or if there's some funding that's sustaining the approach or the request, or if there's hassle for me that I've got to cover, or my volunteers that I've got to cover, I kind of might say something like, well, look, I love the idea of that, but I'd be looking for some kind of contribution. Can you make me an offer? Would be my approach. But if I think it's particularly exciting or original or interesting, then my inclination would always be to take as many barriers away, obstacles away, and make that happen. So,
that's really cool.
Because it's a kind of, we don't pay for anything here. I don't commission artists to come in or musicians to come in and do stuff. It's a partnership deal. It's like a quid pro quo thing that we've got a cool space that I put time and effort into creating and maintaining, and you can come and do your cool thing here for free, and I'll offer the space for free. So it's kind of like you put the content in, I put the space in. Together we try and bring an audience together for that and make it exciting. But that's sort of the deal here. And I was going to say, it sometimes doesn't work. Actually, it almost always works, because if people, because they're sort of doing things for free, they're not doing things to make money. It's their passion for the project that sustains it. And I tell you, when you get that right, that motivation can deliver everything. It just does. So things only happen here because people are really motivated to make them happen. And I try and make it as easy as possible. I've only got limited time that I chuck in, when I'm not doing other stuff. I try and make it so that my day job's about half of the time during the month that I use it. If I was only doing LTB, I'd get bored. If I was only doing my day job, I'd get bored. So I like to have a
nice little balance.
A nice little mix, yeah. That suits me. But if this started to feel like a job, then I think my motivation would just fall through the floor.
That's really interesting. Yeah.
It's got, and I say this to the volunteers and anybody that wants to do stuff. If it doesn't feel like fun, it's not worth doing. That's the key thing. If it starts to be a ball ache, okay, there's some more difficult bits in any project or any running of anything. But if overall you're feeling after you've done 1 hour or 5 hours on that thing is, this is like, I'm not enjoying it. Just don't.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't. There's no obligation. It's like, only do things that you're passionate about and are fun. So that's
great. Yeah.
My kind of key qualifier.
Infuses through everything, like a kind of distinct lack of exploitation, which it kind of highlights the fact that people are incentivized not simply by money. There's a motivation and an incentive that runs deeper than that.
Yes, I wouldn't say, I get this all the time from people who kind of look at what we're doing and go, how is that sustainable? And, you're not paying artists, and you don't want to pay for the building, and you don't want to pay a lease. Like, how is that? It's not sustainable. And I used to get this from City Culture. It's who were looking at how traditionally a legacy is created. I was like, whoa, hold on, come on. There's something really liberating about this approach, that it does work. I've done it, 4 or 5 times now in different venues.
You say you've shown that several times.
And what kills me is the amount of empty space that just sits there, buildings that aren't being used, whether it's short term, whether it's longer term. There are, I don't know, I could probably sit here for another 3 hours talking about the long list of buildings just in this city that are sitting doing nothing. And there's a lot of reasons for that. But any building in the right location, I can breathe life into, and this is kind of like a blueprint for, well, God, if you've got a building that's sitting doing nothing for 6 months, why not give it over to local community use? I mean, there's a certain way that you have to approach things to make it interesting, to make it relevant.
Yeah.
And you know, I keep going back to this artist allotment thing. I am not interested unless there's a public-facing element to the whole thing. So, I don't know. You know, I've had approaches from people who wanted to rent one of the floors here for 3 or 4 weeks for $5,000 or something. It's like, I am just not interested in that. You know, not that I'm not interested in $5,000, but it's that money is not the motivation.
Yeah,
it's being interesting is the motivation. And there was no public-facing element to that. It was just rehearsal space from some big mainstream organisation that I won't mention the name of. But it was like, no, that's not what this is for. And I enjoy making money. We run a bar downstairs, and you know, one of the cool things is looking at the Sum Up app, you know, seeing the actual takings clock in, which is great. But that's not the reason that we run this. It's great that creative activity can generate some income because that helps.
It's like a byproduct of that. Yeah.
Yes, but it's a byproduct. It's not the key reason that we do this. And if, you know, I look at some other venues there's always the temptation, if you've got a high overheads, whether that's staff, whether that's building costs or whatever, to start doing things that you're not excited by. So, for me personally, tribute bands and stuff like that. You know, I get lots of approaches from people saying, "Yeah, we're the I don't know." I must have had 20 approaches like this in the last year. People who are touring tribute acts. They're saying we can bring loads of people in, make loads of money. I am just not interested. I don't want to.
That's a powerful position.
Well, yes, it is quite liberating to be able to pick and choose. Yeah. And I'd hate to be in a situation where we have to do things, or we're kind of tempted to do things to pay the bills that just aren't moving the game culturally on. So, you know, we like to have a mix of things here, but there's no commercial imperative particularly. But I don't know. I suppose the other side of that, you know, what does success look like here? I hate having really cool, interesting events or exhibitions on that are poorly attended. So that kills me. And it also kills me when people walk through the door of the place and go, "Oh, you know, how did I not know that this was here? This is fantastic. Well, that's great to hear. But how did you not know? You know, like the amount of time and effort I put into marketing promotion here. You know, it's, I don't know.
How did you not know?
Yeah, I don't know.
That's your thing.
Yeah, it's just one of the challenges. I mean, Coventry is particularly poor at. There isn't very much engagement of audiences here, and that's why we got awarded City Culture. You know, I'm not like pretending that you know it's a new problem or anything. You don't get awarded City Culture for being good already. You get it because you're crap. You know,
investing in
it's ground zero really in terms of participation and engagement. And I was really hoping that things would change, and you know, sadly they haven't. I don't really see that the situation is any different now than what it was. But there are lots of reasons for that. You know, the whole kind of COVID timing was terrible for that. But you know, for me, it's for Coventry. It's quite it's a challenge or a situation that's got its roots back in, I don't know, late 70s, early 80s, when what was a fairly vibrant city centre just seemed to lose its mojo. That was partly because the car industry that had sustained, a lot of the money and positivity was coming from the car industry, which probably employed, I don't know, half the people in Coventry back then in the late 70s, just suddenly went from being great to being like nothing in the space of 24 months. That kind of 82, 83 period. Coventry just went from having a really good international reputation for things happening to there just being nothing. And people, about that same time, the local pubs and breweries, the estate pubs as I call them, that were built in the 30s in Coventry, just suddenly got their act together and were giving people a lot more choice. So rather than going into the city centre, people were going local, because those pubs were originally for old men drinking kind of thing, and then they changed their approach and started to appeal to a younger audience. And they were doing really good food offerings, so families were using them. So they reinvented themselves at a time when Coventry was particularly vulnerable, and people just stopped using the city centre.
That's real, I didn't know about
it's kind of just, I mean, I can remember 83, 84, you'd go into Broadgate for Christmas and New Year, and there'd be 10,000 people there. And then just within a year, that just stopped happening.
Wow.
It was really weird. It was like somebody had just switched a tap off, that people stopped thinking that Coventry City Centre had anything for them. Mm-hmm. And that affected not just the pubs and clubs, but restaurants, the shops and things. People just got out of the habit of thinking of the city centre as a cultural destination.
Yeah.
And it never really got its mojo back. Whereas other towns and cities found the opportunity to reinvent themselves. I think Coventry it got rid of a load of the interesting warehouse buildings, or the older Victorian style stuff that was readily gentrifiable. It got rid of all of that. Either it was bombed in the Blitz, or most of it actually was got rid of in the 60s and early 70s, just as part of the whole kind of redevelopment thing. And it never kind of caught that wave. And the other thing that constrains Coventry is that there aren't enough people living in the town centre. That dates back to pre-war times, where it was just so heavily industrialised that nobody lived in the town centre. So that a lot of Coventry's population lives out in the suburbs, and they just can't be bothered to come into the town centre. It requires too much of an effort. The ring road also perceptually makes you think, even if you live in Earlston, which I do, which is only 10 minutes walk away, you kind of
feels like really far.
The ring, it makes it feel like it's twice as far away
really
than it actually is.
Yeah.
It's a perceptional thing, and that happens all the way. It just stops people thinking, oh yeah, I'll go into the city centre, because the city centre feels like it's too far away. It's mainly the lack of people that live in the city centre that's affected things. I'm actually an advocate for the City Centre South scheme. Anything that introduces upmarket residential apartment living for not just young professionals but families as well is a good thing, because it starts to make us feel more like Birmingham, more like Manchester, more like any other big city. And it's the European model as well. It's the kind of
finding
thing,
sort of ways to create roots in a place. I suppose,
yes,
isn't it?
yes, and you want families who are hanging out in the city centre, not because they've made a special effort to come here, but because they actually live here. It's on their doorstep.
Yeah.
They've got a vested interest. It just, having a space like this, having LTB, I would love a lot more people to be coming in and using this as the great facility that it is. But I kind of, one of the reasons I'm doing what I'm doing is to try and make that step change possible, to trying to reframe people's thinking of what the city centre is, and that it's got something for them. And these things take time. You're changing quite an ingrained attitude to life that you don't even think about. You you don't think about the reasons that you don't spend more time in Coventry
No,
City
it's
Centre.
making me think, really, yeah. Just thinking about this, the solutions or the way forward, like how do you bring that sort of sense of community and culture into a place like Coventry? I mean, that sort of residential situation is kind of one prong of that, I suppose. And having kind of projects like this, perfect. But yeah, do you have sort of a sense of where we'd need to go more?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting one. That kind of culture buzz, that kind of cool Coventry culture buzz thing is the holy grail. That's what me and a number of other individuals are, I guess, aiming for in terms of our what does good, what does success look like or feel like. But it's, there's so many different things that have to be happening at the same time to create that momentum and that sense of pride and possibility, I don't know. I don't know. I think we had an event on Saturday afternoon here, which was the 1 year anniversary of the Dynamo Project, who are a addiction rehabilitation. It's a cafe that's been set up by an ex-addict on Hertford Street. They've only been open for a year, but we just had a chance conversation 3 weeks ago, and they said, we're going to have a party, get-together, celebration, anniversary thing at our shop, but it's not really big enough. Is there any chance that we could use LTB? And I went, well, yeah. Be a dry bar thing, which is fine. And they put, I don't know, about 15 acts on, a lot of open mic stuff, keyboards, vocals, guitars, rappers, and we had 150 people in here, and there were families, there were, a lot of people that were associated with the event, and the sense of community was just fabulous. I didn't know these people at all, but I felt welcomed and part of what was going on, and it spilled out onto the area outside the Lytton Tree. It was quite a nice afternoon. Just felt, I don't know, it was like, this is the kind of thing that if this was going on every day in 3 or 4 venues in the city, it would automatically start attracting more people in, and you create like a centre of gravity that was like compelling, that because people love that. They, it's that sense of connection and belonging that I think is fundamental to what makes you venture out and spend time. Whether it's shopping, whether it's sitting and drinking a coffee or going to a show or something. It's that connection and belonging that. And for me, I'm not really interested in doing stuff in the communities. For me, the big challenge is Coventry City Centre, and I want to see people fall back in love with Coventry City Centre, because for me that's the big thing that's missing from Coventry. And I'm 59 years old now. I want to leave a legacy that my son, who's 21, can kind of be part of that new Coventry that I'd like to see happening. But I do ramble on a bit,
Yeah, that's great.
There's lots of strands to all of these conversations. I don't have the answer to everything.
Yeah.
You just try and do what you can to be the change that you want to see happening.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, and there's so much interesting stuff, and it's like just picking up on. I guess people are so atomised. You said like about the phones. You just go and get your little cultural hit by opening your phone, and it's the surprises that you get when you come to a place like this. Like you don't go for an event necessarily. Like that experience that I suppose you had on Saturday was oh wow, this has turned out to be something that I wasn't expecting or whatever. And it's those experiences that bring people.
Well, for me, I don't know. It's the random conversations that you have. those random connections that you just didn't expect, that make it interesting. And I can remember back in what we used to call the CET, the Cov Evening Telegraph building. This is like 6 years ago now. I had no interest whatsoever in running a venue. I thought that would be boring, because I thought that people were boring. This is seriously.
Yeah.
And I just thought, I've got my mates, and I thought putting myself in front of house, talking to other people, it's just going to be, what a complete bore that will be. And from day one, it was just an epiphany for me, a revelation that actually, and I think it was not so much the people, but the environment. You create an environment that creates the talking point. That it's a starting point for so many different conversations and stories. And like everybody that came in there, because I had a building that I could talk about, the whole conference. There were so many different strands that go away from that. Did you used to work here? Did you know someone that worked here? Isn't it amazing that 600 people used to work here, and that there were 100,000 newspapers being produced here, and we hardly have newspapers anymore because we use the internet. Yeah. And just imagine.
You don't have to force the conversations.
Well, it just like gives you an excuse to have a really interesting conversation with everyone that comes through, and it sort of just. And I was realising that those conversations were then taking me off into lots of different areas that I didn't expect.
Yeah.
We'd end up saying, well, where are you from in Coventry? What's your background? All that stuff that you just would not think. Yeah. You wouldn't have an excuse to have that conversation with somebody in any other place, or at least it would be a lot more difficult to force that kind of engagement. Yeah. And it happens the same here. Like yesterday, there was some guy who wandered in thinking that we were still the Litentry, just to use the toilet at the back, which I don't have a problem with, as long as people treat the place with respect. He's wandered back out, and I just say my normal thing. You've been here before then, it's just my normal meet and greet, ask just a starting question to get a conversation going. And I find out that he's, we just start with a few little things, and then I find out that he's, back in 1974, he was at, Desmond Dekker came to Coventry and played at St Osberg's Church Hall, which was just an extraordinary random thing that happened back in Coventry that I'd heard of, and he was there, and we had this huge big conversation about what Coventry was like in the the late or the mid 70s kind of thing, and all the influences, and he's telling me about what he'd done with his life, and we were talking about the schools, because he went to a school that was quite close to where I went in Cowden, but it was just like. And I, because I'm in this environment, I can shut that conversation down at a moment's notice. I could just sort of say, "Right, I've got stuff to do," and he could just say, "Well, actually, I've got to go and meet my missus because she's shopping." It's all that kind of thing. There's no pressure to extend that conversation beyond where it's interesting.
And sort of people bouncing together, and then
I must have had. God, at least 5,000 conversations with people in the last 3 or 4 years that I didn't expect. That's only happened because of this. And
do you still think people are boring?
No, I don't. Well, this is my epiphany. And my wife says to me, she went, "Before you started doing this, you used to be awful, and now you're not. You're really engaging and engaged and open and." So I've kind of become a different person through all of this, which I kind of enjoy.
That's cool.
It doesn't feel forced. It's just something that's happened organically, and I don't know, not everybody's like me, but I think it's a good, positive environment to be having those conversations. And I see this quite a lot. We have people who come in here with, I don't know, not a lot of confidence, or they're troubled by something or other, and it's a safe space that allows people to kind of just re-establish connections, make those connections, feel that you're part of something that's that's bigger without any great obligation. You know, you only do as much as you feel comfortable with. There's not like any pressure, and people can come in here and, you know, I suppose I'm quite good at the whole meet and greet thing now, because I see so many different people come through. And if people just want to be left alone, you know, and just sitting quietly in a corner and read a book, or, you know, just wander around taking photos, that's fine by me. You know, you don't have to have a big conversation with me or the volunteers or anybody else that's in the room. But it's, I don't know, it's just it's that those random connections that I think are, you know, we kind of miss as a set of people, don't we? And I think, you know, that's quite special, but that only happens in a physical space.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's part of the motivation here.
Yeah, it's creating those conditions for that to happen, which are fewer and fewer these days, I suppose. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, to finish, like, it'd be good to just think about the end of this place and, you know, what's next? Like, how long's this got left? And did you know when you took it on that, you know, the lifespan was limited?
Yes, I did. So that, I think we weren't sure what the timescales were, but I thought I'd got maybe a year when we first got involved in this, and the first 3 or 4 months of that was just basically getting the building to a state that it was safe for the public to come into, because there was loads and loads of work. And the timescales, thankfully, have been rolling back on. I'll say thankfully, you know, thankfully for LTB, but not maybe so much for Coventry, because it really does need the redevelopment to be happening. We opened in August 21 here. So over 2 years, now 2.5 years. We were originally expecting vacant possession to have to be given the end of this month. So just, you know, basically the end of this week.
Yeah, I was going to say a couple of days.
What I've been working to, because when I got the lease out of the council, it was a 6-month lease. But about 5 weeks ago now, we got a 4-month extension. So we've basically got until the end of March 24. That timescale is still not definitive. The council will advise early in the new year, depending on, there's a thing called the Reserve Matters Planning Application. That's the next big milestone in the City Centre South scheme. That's supposed to be going in early December. So if that goes in on time, and I think there's a public inquiry that's part of the whole process. So unless there's any wrinkles on that, I think maybe there might be a couple of month extension, but that's just my guess with what I've been hearing. But I'd be surprised if it's any longer than that. So I am looking at another potential venue possibility for LTB to move to. It does wear you out inhabiting buildings on a meanwhile basis.
Yes, I was going to say. Yeah.
And it's a bit frustrating that, you know, there's stuff that I'd love to be spending time and money on. That it's just hard to justify your time and your money if it's just a short-term opportunity. So really, what I'm interested in is finding a long-term legacy venue space that we can continue to operate in a similar fashion with relatively low overheads, so that interesting things can continue to happen, and that they can continue to happen after I've hung up my venue managing gloves. Is that the right expression?
Lanyard?
Lanyard, yeah.
There's clippy keys that you...
Yes, you know, I really want to be passing this on to the younger generation of people, because they are the future, and you know, it's something that I think that every town and city needs more of. It needs these kind of interesting spaces that can encourage interesting things to happen. It's a showcase for for creativity in a city, but it's also a place that the community can feel is their own, which I think, even though I run this as my own personal fiefdom, if you like, but this very much is run for Coventry, and I think people get that when they walk in. They don't get a sense of this is Alan Denny's ego project. It's not. It's not about that at all. It's like I keep saying this is not about me. I have fun here, but that's not the reason for it. It's for Coventry people to do their thing in. Whether that's sitting down and doing a workshop or just find out about the history of the city or seeing interesting events on here. And that, the city of culture almost got there with the Assembly Gardens thing. I think for a while the Coventry people felt that was for them, and felt comfortable there, and there were some interesting events going on, but I don't know, it wasn't really ever meant to be a permanent space where you could hang out and do your thing. So that's really what I'm aiming towards. I can't go public with those conversations just yet because we're in early stages. But it's a detached, derelict building within the city centre, within the Ring Road, the other side of town from where we are now. So a stone's throw from the River Sherborne. So there's a couple of clues.
Oh, there you go.
There.
There's cause for hope then. Brilliant.
Yeah.
Well, I just want to say, on behalf of everyone who's been kind of able to display stuff here, thank you for providing this space. It's it is just fantastic. So
thank you.
And thank you for spending some time chatting. This has been lovely.
Yeah. In the Coventry late afternoon sunshine, it's actually quite a pleasant space to be, isn't
lovely.
It, up here?
Good garden room.
The garden room. Yeah, we call this the Long Gallery because it puts me in mind of a Elizabethan Long Gallery in like an old stately home or something. But yeah. So. Okay.
Great. Cool.
Yes, I love talking.
You love talking, yeah.
Well, I don't know, it's something I didn't used to do. I didn't used to be able to talk for
another part of the
2 minutes.
epiphany.
I'd lose the thread of what I was thinking about or...
We'll take one for the road if the bar is still open, and head up the hills at sunrise. I've packed what I found round the house, and I'm hoping it's a big enough bag of supplies. Just bring yourself, 'cause I need nothing else. We'll laugh as we try when we slip and we slide. Just bring yourself, 'cause I need nothing else. We'll ebb and we'll glide in and out of our minds. There's still hundreds of songs I've not had chance to sing, but there's only the time for one more. I want conclusions and closures, and I'd like to read the end of the book in my drawer. Just bring yourself, 'cause I need nothing else. Let's sing without fear that the critic might hear. Just bring yourself, 'cause I need nothing else. Leave your wristwatch at home, time can leave us alone. Let's doodle and paint what we see in the world. In between we're the same underneath. We're a cloud of starlings, we swim in the sky, dance and we float on the breeze. Just bring yourself, 'cause I need nothing else. Hold me in your letter so these words don't just fall through my hands as they're turning this phrase. The sun bounces down from the top of the morning, and we've built up a house on the sand. We'll strike up the fire, reminisce through the evening before the waves claim back their land. Just bring yourself, 'cause I need nothing else. You're the flicker of light in the embers of night. Just bring yourself, 'cause I need nothing